Something really weird has happened with Texans rookie Will Anderson. Don't think it's a bad thing. Don't know if it's a good thing, but it's definitely a thing. Let's get into it in the locker room.
Yeah, it's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop. Won't stop. Yeah, we top two.
Welcome to the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. Appreciate you for coming through. If it's your first time, welcome. If you're returning, thank you very much. Subscribe, like, ride along. It is the best way to get the pulse of what's going on with the Houston Texans digitally, whether you are a Texans fan or not. Best place to get it as far as radio and any Houston sports, the Odyssey app, 10 to 2 Sports Radio 610. So I want to talk about something really interesting that has happened with Will Anderson. But before we do, I want to hear Demeco Ryans. This is one of the many examples of Demeco Ryans gloating about Will Anderson during training camp. Here is Demeco Ryans talking about Will Anderson.
Yeah. For us, Will, what he's done well, it's this relentless mindset of how he attacks each day. He comes out with a relentless motor. He plays with a physical mindset every play. And everybody around, they can just look at Will and see how we need to practice, right? What does it look like if you want to be a great player? You have to work that way. So it all starts with the work ethic, and he's there, right? That's what we want. He exemplifies exactly what I want in that type of player. And playing the end position, now the difference is now we'll play primarily with our hand in the dirt, different from when he stood up in college. The main difference is just he's going to be attacking, right? We don't want him coming off, reading, playing slow. The main thing we want him to do is play as fast as possible so he can go make plays for us. We're not going to slow him down.
All right, and that's actually moderate praise from Demeco Ryans, believe it or not. He said about as much good stuff as you can say about Will Anderson there, and that's basically insulting him compared to what we've heard about Demeco Ryans. And the Texans front office has made they've made no bones about how much they love Will Anderson. Nick Caserio has talked about playing him all over the place. I know Demeco talked about putting his hand in the dirt. They've talked about what a professional he is. I got to talk to him. I got to interview him straight off the field. Just an impressive young man. You've never heard anything bad about him. And quite frankly, if you watch college football, your eyes have been on him for years. Talked about as perhaps the best defensive player Nick Saban had ever had. One of the best players in the SEC, one of the best players in the history of the Alabama program. And the Texans, they liked him enough that he was the top player on their draft board. Now, we can get into the semantics and we can get into the debate about how much they did or didn't give up for Will Anderson, right? I've seen national people talk about, well, they traded this much for him. I look at the Will Anderson, CJ Stroud deal as an organization having a conversation. And we actually talked about this a couple of weeks before it happened. We put the video out where one side of the table is selling CJ Stroud. The other side is selling Will Anderson. What should we do at this number 2 pick? And throughout that discussion, they came to the agreement, hey, we got this extra draft compensation. Let's try to get both. And the best way to get both is to first draft CJ Stroud so you don't have to trade up for the quarterback at 3, because then the price would have been higher. And that way you can get Will Anderson there because Arizona was going to trade no matter what. So that's how I look at it. It doesn't matter. The point is they liked him. And the point is I think even people who subscribe against my theory that it was a package deal, I think they can even admit Will Anderson, if we just put positional value aside, Will Anderson was the guy that they liked the most in the draft. And the more that you see from Will Anderson, it's easy to see why. He's all over the place. He's borderline unstoppable. He looks the part, actually looks like he could get even bigger and put on even more weight. And when he talks, just seems like a swell guy that you want on your football team. But something weird has happened with Will Anderson. And again, not saying it's good, not saying it's bad, but it's a thing. And I think anyone that's covered this team and anyone that's been at camp can agree to this. Kind of stop looking at Will Anderson at practice. You kind of stop looking at him. You know, we've talked a lot about C.J. Stroud. Maybe the fact that you have quarterback competition going on, more of your attention is there. We've talked about Tank Dell. We've talked about the receivers. We've talked about how good this secondary's been. We've talked about how much more athletic the linebackers look. Very rarely does Will Anderson come up. And the thing about it is he's been freaking awesome. He's been awesome. He's made plays. There have been times where it would have been sacks. He's all over the place. He's been good. And it just has me wondering, are people so confident that Will Anderson is going to be good that you've kind of stopped looking at him? And I think you naturally do that when you cover a team. I remember when J.J. Watt first got to the Texans, all you did was watch him in practice. That's all you did. You just watched him in practice, watch him in practice. What's J.J. doing? What's J.J. doing? What's J.J. doing? What's J.J. doing? After he established himself as someone you knew about, you really kind of looked in other directions. Same thing with DeAndre Hopkins. You just kind of stopped paying attention. Last 2 years, Laramie Tunsil, he's held it down in practice. You don't really talk about him because you don't worry about him. You just know he's going to do his job. That's kind of what's happened to Will Anderson lately. And I said at the start of the season, I think that Will Anderson is going to be one of the 10 best players in the AFC South. I think Will Anderson is going to lead the division in sacks. Last year, 9.5 led the division. It was Yannick Ngakoue. He's no longer in the division. Jerry Hughes was second with 9. So that gives you a grasp of, you know, where the edge talent is. Also, you just heard Demeco Ryans talk about what they're going to do with him. See ball, get ball. Seems to be a lot more talent around him. He's been awesome. Maybe there's just a lot of stuff going on, but much like a lot of really good Texans players from the past, kind of just stopped watching him. That might tell us something, or it might not. Subscribe, like, right along. Appreciate you for coming through. How many sacks? Put it in the comments. How many sacks do you think Will Anderson has in his rookie year? And do you think Will Anderson will be defensive rookie of the year? And are you guys kind of noticing what I'm saying? Just go back and look at all the practice breakdowns. You don't hear much about him. He's been freaking awesome too. Maybe that tells you all you need to know about old Will Anderson. Expecting a big year from him. And it seems like without even saying it, a lot of local media types are saying the same thing. Please like the video, subscribe, right along. Best Texans coverage and pulse of what's going on here in the entire country. No matter what happens with this Texans stuff, though, whether Will Anderson is or isn't good when it comes to this Texans game, we are all in this together. Appreciate you for coming through.
Landlock, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number 1. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too.